1. I just started an amazing new job in my field working for the city I live in. The background checks are pretty intense, and I had recently been arrested but not convicted, but the arrest still red flagged. My boss understood, but I still had to get final approval from her boss, a lady named Sue. I'm allowed to work, but if she doesn't approve, I don't get to keep the job. It's my first day and in my boss's office, and been told Sue is coming by that day. I hear some commotion out front and I see her around with other people needing some info from her, and approvals, etc., and decide a direct approach is best, and walk right up to her to introduce myself and explain my case to her in front of the others because the story was true, and I tell her that. I'm an AA and sponsor people trying to get clean and sober. I had been working with this one guy for a while who just kept relapsing. After a huge relapse, which caused job loss, home loss, end of marriage, he had finally, after rehab, 6 months at a sober living place and seemed to finally be on track. One day as I'm racing out the door to work, his mom calls and asks me to check on him. I tell her I'm going to be late for work, but she's desperate and scared. A big no-no is to go check on a possible relapse alone, but I figured he just lost his phone. I'll run by his place and tell him to call his mom and get to work. Run by his place, no answer on the door, so I go around the side to the garage door entrance, and he's sitting there smoking what turns out to be meth and is just tweaking balls. I bust open the door, just pissed, and bark, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!" making him jump out of his skin and take off running into his house. I have no time to deal with his BS right then, but I sure as heck am not going to let him keep going. So I see his glass pipe and baggie, I grab them, burning the shit out of my hand. I grab a sock out of his dryer on the way, and dump it all in there, and will be throwing it all the way in the dumpster in my work parking lot. I am now incredibly late for. A quick aside to those listening. Every "why didn't you just" that you were thinking is correct, but also the thought of a calm, rational mind. I now very clearly see why didn't I just, but at the time, this is what my knee-jerk reaction was. I remember kids playing outside, so I didn't want to just toss it out my window, and I wasn't worried about me relapsing. I was never a big drug fan. I was just pissed, late, and done with him. So I hop in the car, throw the sock in the floorboard, and race off to my job. Yep. Pulled over in the strictest cop city I had to get through to go to work. He asks for my license, etc., and goes to his car. I can't find my insurance verification, so I'm digging for that. Not even thinking about the sock because it's just a speeding ticket. Nope. There's a warrant out for my arrest because I still hadn't paid off, wait for it, $14 on my 15-year-old DUI, which is what got me sober. So he's going to arrest me and take me to jail over $14. And he did, which means I was a no-show at work, which got me fired, and why I needed this better job with the city so bad. If you've never been arrested, they impound your car if you were driving. When they're going to tow your car, they have to do an inventory search to make sure anything of value is still in the car when you pick it up after getting out of jail. It's supposed to be a visual search only, which is what got the case thrown out. Well, that and the hair follicle test showing that I was clean at the time and 3 months prior, but that's another story. Anyway, he finds the sock, pipe, and dope, and now I'm being taken in for what was a felony at the time, which also had mandatory prison time in my state. It all gets thrown out because of the illegal search. The cop was busted by other speeders in the speed trap he's set up and the aforementioned clean drug test. After walking and talking desperately, explaining the whole sordid affair to my boss's boss, we finally made it back to my boss's office as I concluded. So you see, that's why I have that arrest on my record but no conviction. I'm an alcoholic who is sober helping other alcoholics and drug addicts, and got busted with a relapsed meth head's pipe and drugs in my car, speeding to my job I was late to with a warrant out for my arrest. I know it's a lot, Sue, but I hope you understand. My heart was pounding in my chest because I really needed this job. There was a brief pause as she took it all in, then looked me in the eye and said, "I'm not Sue." 2. Gather round, friends, and prepare to shit your pants as much as I have done for the past 2 hours in the AM. tearing my room upside down in the dark, trying not to awaken my parents. Most people are surprised to hear when I tell them that I, a small-statured 22-year-old woman that works at Starbucks, have 24 pet tarantulas and a pet scorpion, as well as breed giant exotic moths as a hobby. The usual reactions are either fascination or, more commonly, abject horror and disgust. What off my back? I love my fluffy 8-legged puppies, and I'm very meticulous about keeping them well. I started my arachnid fondness a few years ago when I was living with my ex. When that withered up, I had to go back to live with my parents. You can imagine their abject horror and disgust when they learned that their house would now be shared by 25 arachnids. The rule was, you can keep them, but if they ever escape, they all have to go. No worries. I've never had an escapee in the past 3 years, and I'm always careful, right? Today that all changed. I don't know how, I truly don't. I was racking my memory trying to figure out how I forgot. But I threw a couple of mealworms in my scorpion's tank earlier as he was pacing, which he usually does when he wants food. I just forgot to put the lid back on. This has never happened, and I'm still questioning my sanity. Well, this happened at roughly 5 p.m., and it wasn't until midnight, when I decided to go to bed, did I glance over at his tank and saw the lid. Gone. Cue my heart dropping to my fucking toes. He was already gone. I knew it before I even checked his hiding places, so now I'm freaking out. My door has been open sporadically throughout the day. For context, his tank is kept on a shelf above my bed. He was not on the shelf, meaning that he would have fallen off the shelf and most likely right onto my fluffy pink pillows. I turned over my mattress, checked under my bed, checked under anything on my floor, checked behind furniture against walls, checked under furniture against walls, stripped the duvet and pillowcases off my bed. I'm checking in my drawers that are closed that he couldn't possibly get into. Nothing. I don't have a UV light. I'm on Amazon at 1 a.m., ordering a UV light with premium next-day delivery. I'm putting out a damp towel, a water dish, and some live food on my floor, hoping to attract him. Nothing. My parents are asleep. I can't search any rooms outside my room. If they find out, all my beloved pets will be taken away. I'm panicking and crying as my spiderless future flashes before my eyes. I'm trying to remain calm, but as the minutes tick by and I still can't find him, I'm losing hope. Oh, I also have to be up in 4 hours to go to work tomorrow. Eventually, I'm about to give up and accept my fate. I'm having visions of going to work, my parents waking up and finding him as they go to put on their shoes in the morning. I'm getting screaming, angry phone calls at work. I'm exhausted, and I don't know what else I can do. In one last effort, I search my pillowcases again, check my duvet, and then I run my hand along the sides of my mattress where the edge of the sheet is. And I grab something hard and wiggling and very unhappy that I just grabbed his tail. He was tucked up under my sheet right where my head would have been. Had I gone through with giving up and going to bed? I wasn't even mad that he was in my bed, just a wave of relief that hit me when I found him alive and okay. That I wouldn't have to say goodbye to my pets or have my parents hate me forever. He's back in his tank now, lid safely secured. I double-checked this time. Thank you for listening. I don't think I'm getting any sleep tonight out of the sheer amount of panic I went through for the last few hours. 3. Back in 2014, I was accepted into a medical school in another country. Me and my dad were flying over there in order for me to attend the university. This happened in December of 2014, following the end of Christmas holidays, when I visited back home to spend time with family. As I was having a few difficulties adjusting to life on my own in a different country, my dad decided to come with me for a short while in order to help me adjust better to my surroundings. We had a flight booked on the 29th of December to go back to said country, as I had exams coming up in the second week of January starting the 7th. So following check-in and scanning to the point where our carry-on luggage is scanned through the machines, we got ready by getting the relevant items out, laptops, tablets, etc. I went through first and everything was fine. Then came my dad's turn, and this is where things got interesting. So, what my dad had not told me was that he had purchased an expensive anatomy skeleton set in order to help my preparation for the anatomy classes I was going to have following the exams for the first semester, but had kept it hidden in his luggage as a surprise for me. You can probably guess what happened when his bag went through the scanner, but I'll tell you anyways. The moment his bag went through the security guard checking the baggage going through the machines, well, his face goes pale and he quickly gestures over a colleague who was checking the insides of people's bags at the end of the machine where you collect your bags from. They both were discussing something, and then I saw both of the security guards go and grab a pair of latex gloves, following which they gestured over some more of their colleagues who were free on the other lines. Upon seeing this, they also put on some gloves as well. Then, the security officer called over my dad. On my end, I was so confused as to what on earth was going on. Why were all these security officers acting in the way they were? So I went over to where my dad was, and this is where I heard the officer ask my dad to open his bag. Here's how the conversation went. "Can you please open the bag up, sir?" Dad complies with the request. "Do you have any items you wish to report to us at this moment in time?" "No, I don't." He's rather confused. The security officer begins rummaging through the bag, but struggles to find the anatomical set. "Can you please open these smaller pockets, please?" Okay, no problem. Dad proceeds to follow the instructions. When he opened one of the bigger pockets, that's when the anatomy set was revealed. "What is this?" Pulling out one of the bones from the set that Dad had taken apart. He now realizes the situation. "That's my son's anatomy set. He's attending medical school at our destination. I bought it for him." Some context here. High-end anatomical skeleton sets are made to look very realistic and can resemble an actual person's skeletal structure. They are also painted and colored in a way that makes them look that much better, combined with the type of material that is used to make them feel like an actual piece of the skeleton. This is why it can be thought to be someone's remains. "Are you sure these are bones from an anatomy set and not from actual human remains, sir?" "I'm positive. If you would like, I can show you the email from the place I ordered this from." "Can you show us? As if this is found to be human remains, we will have to detain you, and the remains will have to be sealed and disposed of." Dad proceeds to pull out the email from the website where he purchased the set from and shows it to the security officer. "It is indeed an anatomy set. Thank you for your cooperation." The security officer and his colleagues then take off their gloves and breathe a sigh of relief. Dad laughs. "I can see why seeing a pile of bones in carry-on luggage would be concerning. Sorry about that." I'm now laughing harder. "Dad, you almost got us both in trouble. Why didn't you tell me or the security officer you had purchased an anatomy set for me? What the hell, Dad?" Shortly after that, the security officer guided us to our terminal, as we ended up delaying the flight because of the checks so that we could board. They told us to be sure to inform the security at our destination country to be aware of the set, so that we do not have to go through the same difficulties. 4. The last week before graduation, all courses done, all responsibilities forsaken. All that remained was the student week, a week of fun and, hopefully, relaxation. We had plans for sports, smaller parties, and dinner with the class, but what I looked most forward to was the famed Burtrisk Bingo. I'm not sure if this is something that pops up elsewhere in Sweden, but in my hometown, this competition basically consists of several teams of students trying to compete as many as possible of a list of 100 challenges in only 2 days for a chance at the glory of being the most shameless team at the school. All 3 large high schools in the city have their own versions of this, with ours entailing fun activities like shaving your head 5 days before graduation, making out with a classmate, I made up with a boy while making a Borat impersonation, and bathing naked in the ocean with video proof. My team, me and 2 pals, decided to take this quite seriously and went all in for most of the challenges. But one that seemed extraordinarily easy was going to another city, about an hour away by car, and taking a picture there. I smiled at the thought of these easy points. It could even be relaxing, a nice little road trip with the boys. How foolish I was. After the picture was taken and we were about to leave, my bladder protested. My pal suggested I just whip it out on sight and water the bushes. But I am no common savage. I scoff at their peasantry, and my arrogance instead directs me to the nearby franchise burger joint, for a more sophisticated lavatory experience. I get in the doors, notice the dust and planks on the floor, the carpenter-looking dudes that I assume to be carpenters due to them looking like carpenters. They're renovating. Okay, fine, this shouldn't be a problem. They've clearly put up some red and white tape to show where to go and where not to go. I approach my target, my memory now telling me that I am stepping on some random red and white tape on the floor as I made my way into the toilet area. I look at the first toilet. There is no toilet. Okay. Right. I look into the second toilet. No toilet. Shit. Third and final toilet. There is one! Thank God. I quickly make my way in and shove my ass onto the seat without a worry in the world. Let my nether regions rip as I let Piston's fury roar. I, of course, do not notice that, in fact, my stream very audibly is not in any way coming into contact with water. I finish up, look around for toilet paper, no TP, whatever. I can just dangle my wangle and shove it back into its cave. Bit gross, but could be worse. I get up and go to wash my hands, turning on the tap and being met by a thunderous silence. Nothing comes out. I get worried. No water in tap equals no connection to the sewage system. And no connection to the sewage system would mean... oh no. I slowly approach the open toilet, afraid of what I know is coming, but refuse to accept. I look down into the toilet. What I was met with. No water. Nothing. Just a pile of piss right in the toilet. Golden, plentiful piss. This yellow ocean a monument to my hubris, my failure. Still in denial, I try to flush. First once, then twice. Nothing. I just pissed into an unfinished toilet. I look beyond my urine and notice the white lid beneath, probably sealing off the toilet from the sewage until ready for use. I imagine the poor soul who would have to reach through what was once a delicious Pepsi Max lime. Now a lukewarm liquid obstructing the product of their hard work. I decided that wouldn't be me. I get out, sweaty and stressed as hell, heart thumping like my bladder just a few minutes before. I will walk out, cool as a breeze, make a smooth escape, and step out before anyone notices my sin. Commence my plan. Step 1. Walk. I don't get to step 2. Just a step or two out of the toilet area, one of the carpenters walks past me. Probably the head honcho, since he was bald and older than the others. His commandeering voice startles me. You're not supposed to use those bathrooms. I panic. Yes, I blurt out, eyes widened in fear of both the frightening carpenter and my sudden capacity for inhuman noise. The carpenter looks away from me with a disappointed face and starts walking towards the toilets, towards the crime scene. I swallow heavily, my pride along with my saliva. I start walking briskly to the exit, breaking into a run the moment the doors open before me. I run, looking like an absolute idiot across the parking lot to my friend's car, lunging into my seat and screaming, "Go, go, go!" to my pals. They ask me what happened as I cower beneath the headboard until we're about a kilometer away from the burger joint. I almost cry as I tell them what happened, and they laugh at me. This is now both a running joke for us and a trauma for me. I will never return to that city ever again, ever fearful of the bald men telling me I have a debt to pay. Just like P, he longs to be close to me. 5. Man, I've had such a bizarre night. All I have left to do besides stare into space is to tell someone about it. I just want to scream. But everyone I know is asleep, so thank you. You're really standing in the gap here. I'm out of town for a conference, okay? I'm doing 2 nights in a secondary city. Easy trip. Get into town in night 1. Speak the following day, spend 1 more night because it'll be late by the time things wrap up, and fly home the next morning. I get in for that first night. It's already kind of late, so I shake hands and whatever else, then head to the hotel bar to unwind from the flight. I'm just trying to get my head together for the following day. But you know how it is when you're out, you can't help but notice things. Most were just average. Hey, how about that? Acknowledge it and move on. Never think about it again. Things like, looks like those guys just came from a wedding. Or, wow, that table's on their 5th round. You know, random stuff. But my consciousness kept returning to one woman off in the corner of the bar. She'd made simultaneously half-hearted and desperate advances at a few guys earlier on in the night, but they'd all brushed her off. A couple of them had sent her a conciliatory drink on top of whatever she'd already supplied for herself, so she was getting somewhere past buzzed. There were alarm bells going off as I watched her, because the later the night got, the seedier the men she approached became. She just gave off this air of vulnerability, and I felt compelled to intervene, but wasn't sure what I could reasonably do without getting deeper into the situation than I cared to. Usually on a work trip, I wouldn't have leaned into my kinder nature at all, but knowing Father's Day was just around the corner and is a difficult time for just about 9 out of 10 people, I figured a bit of extra compassion was in order. I am admittedly the type to get too involved sometimes. I've been the recipient of a lot of help in my downtime, so I like to pay it forward whenever possible. Problem is, sometimes I misread the situation and just end up further complicating things. So I was long past ready to go up to bed, but every time I did I got chills thinking about what could happen to this woman as a result of her strange and, at times, downright dangerous behavior, even if it was just making a mistake she really regretted. I felt responsible to do what I could. Eventually the bar was getting ready to close, and she wasn't leaving. She started looking more and more freaked out as patrons began filtering away and staff were cleaning up. So I finally walked over and I just said, "Hi, how's your evening?" to try to size up the situation and see if this called for an Uber back to a place, a reassuring word from a stranger or something similar, or if it was beyond my scope. She immediately started being flirtatious and touching my leg, and all this 0 to 60 stuff, but I made it clear that I was not into that whatsoever. Upon closer look, she looked like a put-together girl who'd been torn apart, you know? She had an undercoat of someone who works a lot on their appearance with an overcoat of exhaustion. We talked a bit, small talk mostly. She asked about the conference, I asked about her. I didn't get the answers I was looking for. I don't think she did either. But once it was clear I didn't want sex, she was starting to talk about how she'd been drinking a lot that night and feeling kind of funny, and she was going through a lot and just didn't want to be alone and didn't want to go home because she has some problems she couldn't face right now, on and on. Pretty much the only coherent thing that became clear from her monologue was that she was in no condition to get home, let alone go home with someone. I was worried about even putting her in an Uber by herself because she was so disoriented that she gave me 2 different hometowns in one conversation. Finally, I just asked if she'd like to spend the night in my room, as long as she was alright sleeping on the couch.
Why didn't you just get her own room?
The conference hotel was mad and expensive, and I wouldn't have been able to afford a room there, let alone an extra one. Thankfully, the room I was in was comped. The people who sponsored me to speak at the conference hooked me up with a suite for my stay. It's got an entryway with a sitting area that's separated from the bedroom by a door. I figured that was okay. I was so paranoid I even FaceTimed a female friend of mine and explained the situation, and I was like, just stay on the phone with me until she's all set up and I'm in bed and everything's cool. So it all goes according to plan. My one-night guest is situated and she's thanking me profusely, and I'm telling her it's no big deal. I conk out for the night. I wake up early, around 6 a.m., to get ready for the day's work, and get this. She has the nerve to bitch about my having woken her up with my moving around and showering and stuff.
You said I could sleep here, but I can't sleep if you're gonna make all that noise.
Whatever, right? Mornings come and she'll be out any minute. I ignore her and take my valuables out of the room, because stranger, and tell her to have herself a nice day. I head to my conference and dive in. Don't make it back to the room until a little after 12, just to grab a sport jacket for my presentation. She's still in there. I couldn't believe it. I checked my watch and, yep, it was well into the afternoon. What is she doing there still? She was lying on the bed, tapping away on her phone without a care in the world. I was so dumbfounded I wasn't even sure what to say to her. I tried to think of something, but couldn't. so just figured I'd go do my portion of the day, then deal with this when I got back. There was nothing in there she could steal, so no big deal. Well, I go into my closet for my jacket, and what do I see? Suitcases. 6 of them. Not like backpacks and purses either, full checked luggage, oversized bag suitcases. And those bright pink cheetah print bags sure as fuck weren't mine. She was in the process of unpacking. Her clothes were neatly arranged in half the drawers. On the way out, I saw she'd even set up a personal shower caddy in the bathroom. I worried she'd somehow gotten a copy of my key, but later realized she'd just put the door latch out, so the door wouldn't shut behind her when she went down. So I told the White Lion was just like, "Hey, I don't know why you've got bags here, but I'm leaving today. So don't keep them in here, you should probably go, actually." But she called my bluff, which should have been my first or second or 12th red flag, that this was not her first rodeo. She was like,
"You'd have to check out by now if you were leaving today, right? So, yeah, I was actually hoping I could stay an extra night."
"This trip is my one-shot vacation out of the office for months. Nah, girl, two's a crowd when it comes to strangers and vacations." Usually I'm much nicer, but this whole situation was beginning to freak me out, and I was already nervous leading up to my presentation. So I literally just said, "No, you can't. Check out us today. Bye, it was nice meeting you." And off I went back to work. Things went well. I was down there for the talks after mine. The whole thing was maybe 5 hours, and I headed back up to change for dinner. Yep, she's still in there. I'm starting to think I need the hotel to kick her out at that point. I go down to the front desk and explain the situation. I spare the whole "I was trying to be a good guy" part of the story, and just tell him I met a girl at the bar last night and she's now refusing to leave my room after repeated direct requests, and somehow even got her luggage up there. The desk guy starts to turn white as a sheet and asks me to hold on. 20 full minutes later, the desk guy comes up to me, extremely apologetic, and informs me he cannot remove her from the room because her name is also on the room as a registered guest. It takes a few seconds for the reality of what he's just said to sink in. Because that must be a mistake, right? How could that have possibly happened? The desk guy explains intensely apologetically that the girl came to the desk claiming to be my girlfriend and asking for a room key for herself. The desk said they could not do that unless she was on the room, and she could not be added to the reservation without the approval of the person who booked the room. That's not me, that's the conference organizer who comped it with his credit card and who barely knows me. I'm an additional name on the room, but I don't control the reservation in terms of adding or removing people, because it's not my name on the credit card. So the desk called the guy who comped my room out of his meetings, and she told him she had come to surprise me and watch my talk, and just needed a key to get into our room to change. The organizer had no reason to suspect I was basically being catfished, so he just signed whatever he had to and welcomed her to the city, and ran back to the meeting that he'd left in order to sort all this out. Now here I am being told that as a result she can't be kicked out of the room, not by the hotel, not by the cops, and least of all by me. They tried to get the conference organizer on the phone, but he was already in a dinner with his phone off. More than likely getting hammered beyond coherency. It was, after all, the final night of a conference he'd been planning for 2 years that had previously endured a COVID cancellation. I could not miss the dinner I'd booked. The others had flown in for this dinner. So I had no choice but to once again put a pin in this situation and go to dinner. I was way too distracted thinking about how bizarre what was going on back at the hotel was to really engage anyone. But it had to be done. As soon as the check hit the table, I rushed back to the hotel to deal with the situation. She'd latched the door shut, even put a "Do Not Disturb" sign up. My stuff was sitting strewn all about outside the room in crumpled piles. This was at about 10 p.m. I go down to the desk and ask them to come unlock the door. There's a tool to get past those latches, there must be, and if anyone has one, it would be a hotel. They say they can't, because she's a guest on the reservation, so they can't lawfully unlatch the door unless they had a reason more dire than my wanting her gone. I argued with them over the ridiculousness of this for a few minutes, but finally realized I wasn't going anywhere and moved on to finding other alternatives. I called the cops. Non-emergency number, of course, but still, I figured one should call the cops things got serious. Well, they were nice enough to listen to me vent about every trivial detail about the situation for a full 5 minutes, but their response was that the situation really sucked. However, they couldn't do anything to help me if she's legitimately on the reservation. The police dispatcher, or whomever it was actually pretty affable. They were all like, "Man, what a trip. The least the hotel can do for you after all that is set you up in a new room. You said you had a really nice room before, too, before the hoochie squatted in it. So yeah, the least they can do is give you a standard room on the house." The guy sounded a little stoned, frankly. But you know what? The idea wasn't half bad. I returned to the hotel and told them that if they couldn't make my current room accessible, then I'd need a new one. The desk guy said in the nicest possible way that this was not their problem. I escalated to a night manager, someone I'm pretty sure they had to call in from somewhere else, and he agreed to set me up with a room. They checked the computer. They checked again. They went in a back area and whispered furiously. They returned and told me, unfortunately, they were at capacity. I tried all the classic lines about you must have a room or two on reserve for famous people or emergencies, but they seemed to be serious. I regrouped and sat in the lobby, weighing my options. I googled how to break down a door, and based on the descriptions, quickly rolled it above my ability zone. I googled how to force one of those latches open, and it actually seemed doable, but then I considered what I'd do once I got into the room. Drag her out of bed? One night's sleep was not worth returning to this town nowhere near I live to answer for an assault case. I considered sleeping in the lobby to make it their problem, but they were playing obnoxiously loud jazz music in the lobby, and I figured the furniture wouldn't be particularly clean. With that in mind, it would be safer and more pleasant to just sleep in my rental car. There were no other hotels in walking distance of this place, and I'm living fairly lean at the moment, but I decided if I could get a room at another place for under $200 within 10 minutes drive of this hotel, I'd just spring for a car service to take me. Not only was the nearest hotel over half an hour away, but I called just for the heck of it. And they were also at capacity. "Sorry, big convention in town." So exhausted, it was 1 a.m. at this point, I decided to sleep in my car. I reached for my keys. Fuck! First, I dart outside, and thankfully the car's still where I left it. Next, I methodically search my pants pockets, take every item out of my suitcase and check the pockets in them. Check all my bags again. Walk all the paths I came down in the hotel, and finally accept that the keys are still in the bedroom area where I must have accidentally left them. I went up and knocked until she screamed, "What?" at me. The nerve. And I politely, or as politely as I could under the circumstances, explained that she'd won and I was going to sleep in my car, but my keys were inside. So could she be so kind as to pass them to me outside the door? No response. I'm practically pleading at this point, telling her she wouldn't even need to unlatch it, just toss the keys out through the crack in the door. Nothing. I was mad at myself for even pleading at that point because, damn it, I have a hotel room. I was doing a nice thing. She was pleading me just a while ago. I banged and banged on the bedroom door and tried screaming and making a ruckus, but although she cursed bloody murder at me, she did not open the door or even hint at an intention to. Not even to hand me my keys. After about half an hour of this back and forth, I just tired myself out. I'd messaged a group chat of my friends earlier to keep them updated on this insane situation, though I knew they'd likely be asleep. For whatever reason, one briefly woke up and saw my texts, and he suggested I pull the fire alarm, forcing everyone out of the hotel. I spent more time than I care to admit seriously considering this. However, a bunch of my brand new business associates were in the hotel, and I was really a guest of someone else who's local and comps rooms here often, so I had their good standing to consider. Plus, it must be difficult, if not impossible, to pull one of those without appearing on camera. And even if someone did manage to successfully pull it, there's no guarantee she'd actually leave the room. So the risk did not match up with the reward, but I did think about it. A lot. Now, it is a little before 3 a.m., and I'm sitting in the lobby getting comfortable for the night, waiting for the checkout time, at which point they can legally force her out. Thankfully, it doesn't conflict with my flight at all, but still. I'm surrounded by loud jazz music, I'm on an uncomfortable razor-thin couch in a public lobby that's probably seen 1,000 assies just today alone. And I'm done doing favors for people for a while. Though writing this out, I do see 1 or 7 points where I was being naively dumb and inviting this fiasco to begin with. Oh, and get this. When I was getting ready to sleep for the night, the security guard, who was aware of the situation, had the nerve to try and tell me people aren't allowed to sleep here. I think the look in my face told him how seriously he could hope I'd take that one. So I successfully killed almost an hour writing this out, and I'm glad someone will be able to commiserate. Only 7 more hours to go. Good night to you, and just night to me. Update. Hotel knocked at 10 on the dot and told her to get out. She didn't. They wasted no time calling the police. A single uniformed officer came. I figured they'd need a SWAT team to oust her sorry ass, but instead he just knocked and announced himself as police and told her she needed to vacate the room, and she was out pretty quick. All my stuff was untouched, keys included. I had warned them about that so someone could keep an eye on my rental car while I looked for the keys. The room was a mess, but other than that, no problems. She even left 1 expensive shoe in the room, and the hotel's locked her out now, completely banned, so some karma back around. Good luck to her on that. I'm at the airport. Glad I was able to share the wild, pathetic story with someone. And also thank you to my very, very, very understanding wife for encouraging me to share this story. Hello there, chums. The Celestial Heater here. Hellfreezer's twin from an alternate universe. I heard the awful thing he did when he cancelled embarrassing stories. My heavens. Didn't happen in my universe, so I decided to jump on over here in this Sunday, share one of mine with you. I've currently got Hellfreezer tied up in the basement. Oh, shut up, you Bulgag's just a name. Where were we? Yes, we're going to see how this works out. Now, the idea is we'll bring it back, we'll do a few episodes, we'll see how well they perform. My current thinking is I'm going to... Shut up! Now, my current thinking is we're going to alternate between embarrassing stories and spinning plates on Saturdays. But I'll try a couple of other days during the week as well to see if it performs better then. Just a sec. You better not be drinking my Dr. Pepper! Well, I am, actually. I don't have this in my world anymore. Not since the great Dr. Pepper shortage of 1993. Probably shouldn't talk about it. If it hadn't been for Emperor Elvis, that could have been... Well... You guys don't care about that. So that's the plan. We'll see how it goes, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. As usual, thank you very much to everyone who shared the stories with us. Leave a comment, and maybe share the video around and subscribe, and we'll get old silly Hellfreezer up to 1 million. Oh God. Okay, apparently he isn't even at 100,000 subscribers yet. Well, I think he needs all the help he can get in that case. So until next time, thank you very much for stopping by. And remember, look out for yourself, because no other bastard's going to.